You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
What is up, good people? Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this week. This week, I have an incredibly special episode. One of those I never, ever thought this would happen type of moments. This week, I am talking to Marcos Curiel from P.O.D. Yes, that P.O.D. The band that has been coming up on this podcast a lot lately for some strange reason. Maybe it's the universe bringing us all together. I don't know. But either way, I'm talking to Marcos, and I had a great chat. I think you are going to absolutely love this. The Patreon episode goes into some crazy places, man. So good. Huge shout out to Marcos for taking the time to come on this episode. I really enjoyed our chat. And I want to get you into this episode as quickly as possible, but I have one thing I need to let you know about. I've got the details for the Pizza Hang in Nashville coming up Saturday, May 4th. I'm flying out literally the day this drops. Let me check my calendar. Yes, the day this drops. Wow, I didn't plan that out very well. This is going to be a mess. Anyway, we are meeting at 2809 Dickerson Pike in Nashville, Tennessee. That is 2809 Dickerson Pike in Nashville, Tennessee. I am buying pizza from 5 Points Pizza. This is the new location for Eastside Music in Nashville, Tennessee. Blair's been on this podcast before. He's one of the owners. He's a great dude and offered this big empty facility for us to hang out and chill in. Now, there's not, as far as I'm aware, a bunch of music gear in there just yet. This is still an early stage thing. So we're getting in early. We're going to be eating pizza. We're going to be having a good time. Be there or be square, as the kids say. If you're in Nashville at all, please come out Saturday, May 4th at 6 p.m., 2809 Dickerson Pike. That's May 4th, 2024. So if you're listening to this in the future, sorry, we already did it. 2809 Dickerson Pike, Nashville, Tennessee, Saturday, May 4th at 6 p.m. Be there or be letting me eat all the pizza by myself, which would probably be a bad thing. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into this episode with Marcos. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Marcos Curiel from P.O.D. What's going on, dude?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this should be a good time. I'm excited to get into it with you. It's a weird kind of, I don't know if it's the universe or what it is. P.O.D. keeps coming up on this show, like in conversation. And I always have to tell the same weird story every time it pops up. But it's just, and then I got the email like, hey, do you want to do this interview? I was like, what is going on right now? This is crazy.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. But the story is probably kind of a weird one, and I'm sure other people have told it before, but it's so distinct in my brain for some reason. I used to have to do the recycling when I was a kid. That was one of my household chores. And it wasn't like it is, I'm in the Portland, Oregon area, and back in the day, you had to divide everything up, cardboard here, glass here, whatever. Now you just throw it all in the can. But yet back in the day, you had to divide it up. And I remember looking at this Pepsi box. And it said P.O.D. on the side of it.
Really?
I was like, what is that? What is that? And it's talked about your band. Your band had like a thing on as a promotional item on the side of a Pepsi box. I was pretty young and couldn't just go around buying music at that time. But that always stuck in my brain for some reason. So by the time I started going to stores, I was like, oh, what's this P.O.D. band? And by that time, you guys had really taken off and blown up.
In that sense, that marketing and promotion worked.
It did. It's not one you'd think would work, right?
Because you just never know. There's a thing saying like, it's not just one thing. It's a multitude of things. Like you were just saying, oh, P.O.D. gets brought up. And then all of a sudden it's this and that. It's like, that's the way the universe works. But it's also how we as humans can like, process in our minds things. And I was like, dude, that's that one band. I seen them. I heard their song on this video game, but you know what, dude? I just saw them. They opened for this band. You know what I mean? And it's just the more crazy. I would have never thought we were on a Pepsi box though. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know why that hit my brain so hard. Probably because I folded up like 12 Pepsi boxes and I kept seeing it. Like, I don't
You
know.
were meant to see us, man.
I was meant, but who would have told, me, at that time, like, oh yeah, one day you're going to interview one of the dudes from that band. That's the craziest
Awesome.
thing. So
Well,
cool.
dude,
That just,
we've put in some miles up in Oregon, man. Portland, dude. Like that we used to play a festival out there called Tom Fest. Like it was
hmm
by the Bridge of the Gods. It wasn't in Portland, but it's kind of in the vicinity, so to speak. But
yeah.
yeah, we have a lot of friends up that way, man. Different bands and from hardcore to metal and crustcore, all that stuff, dude. So
Yeah. I actually attended, I think maybe the last year of that festival. It was
mm,
that was a wow, that's bringing it back. It was right after my wife and I got married. Slept in the back of the truck. Lots of
yeah,
memories on this episode.
yeah, man. But that's what I'm saying. Like
Mm,
we've put in some time even before we got signed to a major on the independent side. We would always come through Oregon, man, and
mhm.
Washington, and we have some loyal friends and fan base out that way. So that's cool, man, that you're out that way.
Yeah. So where's home these days? I know where you're
Sa-
from, but where's home
but
now these days?
that's I'm still in San Diego, man.
Wow. After all this time.
The most expensive city in America now, more than New York, more than San Francisco. But I'm used to it because that's all I've known until I start
Mhm.
traveling, and then I see the different prices in different areas on tour, and I'm like, holy, holy crap, dude! Like this stuff's way cheaper here. You know what I mean? And it's a trip, but I'm used to it. You just got to work extra hard, like
Yeah.
put a little
Yeah.
extra effort just to make that extra money. But it's all good.
It's an interesting conundrum, right? When you grow up in one place and it becomes a place like that. Portland used to be one of the cheapest places in America, let alone the West Coast, but definitely not that anymore. And
Yeah,
I'm born and raised too, so I kind of feel like that's weird to see. Go back down south and like, what, I can get this piece of chicken for like $5. What? This would be $12 back home, you know?
yeah, pretty much. It's little things like that. A gallon of milk or whatever, almond milk, whatever you drink. I was like, dude, this is way more expensive back home. Like, you know what
hmm
I mean? But I get it. Cost
Yeah,
of living, man.
such is life, right? And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you too, though. I can't see myself leaving. This is my spot.
Yeah, I love coming home, and to find out that it's a vacation spot for people, I'm like, yeah, well, that's not what they see is not exactly where I grew up, but
Sure.
as an overall city, it's like, yeah, man, like when I get to go home, I love the weather. The weather, you can't beat the weather.
Right. It's beautiful.
We have the best weather probably in the world. I mean, it's one of the top places climate wise. So yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
climax too, man.
That might be It's a little known fact about San Diego, but we won't get into that.
There you go.
But going back, since you've been a part of the music scene there forever, how has it evolved in San Diego specifically since you've been in it?
Yeah, man. Growing up in San Diego musically, we grew up in a scene that was, it was a venue here called Soma. There still is, and at the time, it was a different like vibe. It was actual scene. Like there was a hardcore punk rock scene that P.O.D kind of came up in, and that was in the South area, which we call Southtown, and that's like from basically downtown San Diego to the border, which is the border of San Diego and Tijuana, Mexico.
hmm
And there was a punk rock hardcore scene, straight edge scene, and we used to go to a lot of garage shows, backyard gigs. We started playing those gigs, and as we grew older, we started to venture out and tour, and then we started playing the big all ages club Soma, and it's different now from what I understand. There's not really a scene like that anymore. It's more of selective bands that actually want to gig, and they end up gigging at certain venues, and then they kind of come up. There's no real scene per se, but it's San Diego got some pretty eclectic sounds coming out of it, predominantly indie, punk and reggae are big deals here. But to give you an idea, you got like the Pierce the Veils, the As I Lay Dyings, the Switchfoots, obviously P.O.D, and then the big giants, Blink 182. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
all San Diego, and that kind of gives you a general like little landscape of the whole scene. There's just a bunch of different styles that comes out of here when it comes to rock, but it's predominantly punk. And you have like Louis the 14th, you know, the Hot Snakes, go even further back, Drive Like Jehu,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So San Diego has had its share. It doesn't get known as like an LA scene or nothing like that, but there's a lot of bands that have come out of here that people are like, oh dang, I had no idea, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's pretty cool. I mean, Thrice is kind of San Diego-ish, Orange County, and then you
Yeah.
got Stone Temple Pilots, same kind of thing. So we have our and Jewel. Can't forget Jewel. So we have our artists here, and there's still a lot of they do the San Diego Music Awards. I try to attend as much as I can just to kind of see what's going on. Uh, but yeah, dude, it's eclectic, but it's also not the same from what I can see. But I'm also way older now. I'm not in that sort of scene per se. I
Sure.
try to stay connected, but yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a beautiful place to grow up. Super expensive, but you have the luxury of going to the beach. You have the luxury of going to the mountains, the desert, and going up to LA and coming back, or going to a third world country as Mexico and coming back. So
Mm-hmm.
though it's a very, very well-rounded, culturally mixed. All the while, you got military. So,
Right.
it's all of that all mixed into one, man, and that's kind of shaped us as a band and who we are. And we're probably one of the louder, more proud bands from San Diego. You
Yeah,
know,
I'd say so.
we've been proud of that. So that hasn't changed. It's just a trip when you travel and go to like South America, or if you end up in Europe and you see people wearing certain things from San Diego, like certain teams, and you're like, dude, you're from Belgium. You're rocking a freaking Padres hat. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
whatever. It's just, or you're from, Brazil, and they're like, yeah, man, I ordered it online because you guys
Mm-hmm.
wear it. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So, yeah.
So so kind of, in the vein that this is supposedly sort of a gear show, what when you guys were playing those shows back in the day, what did your rig look like then versus now?
Whatever I could afford and whatever I could piece together.
Of
And
course.
I started with the early stuff like crates, and because it was all I could afford in a Randall,
Mm-hmm.
and then as we progressed and I was able to save some money or get partial endorsements at the time or whatever, even just a discount, I moved up into different amps that I wanted, like Marshalls and Boogies and stuff like that. And I haven't veered away from the Boogies, man. I've gone to Orange, I've gone to Hughes and Kettner, but my mainstay's always been Boogie for my crunch and my dirty sound.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mesa, like I'm still playing a dual rectifier. It's just perfect for what I need it to do, especially in P.O.D. But I'll mix it with the Mark V,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a little more percussive, tight, a little more mid range. But you can kind of do everything on that amp. But for me, it blends well with the dual. It gives me more of a British tone, if that makes
Yeah,
any sense.
it does.
And so I'm still using that. And I've used profilers. I've gotten into that for a little bit. It's just whatever you want to call it, old school or just preference, man. Like I need air, I need noise, and I need warm tubes. And
Mm-hmm.
as a guitar player, I feel it. And maybe the listener out there doesn't hear it, but I hear it, and it bothers me. when I hear a strictly digital sound for the dirty stuff. Because I'm using a Roland Jazz Chorus 120 for my clean.
I
And
love
then,
the JC 120. It's
oh,
great.
dude, I mean, it's iconic, bro. It goes back to the Smiths, and Depeche Mode, and like just all the stuff that's ambient. I mean, even for the modern rock, Metallica. Like I love it, and I blend that in with an AC30, a
Oh,
Vox.
perfect. Yeah.
So I've always tried to blend amps live, and sometimes I don't have the capacity to bring it all out. Sometimes I bring half of it. It just depends on how lazy I am and if I don't want to bring out my whole rig. For instance, on this upcoming tour, I'm going to just use a dual and the Jazz Chorus 120 for clean. So, yeah, man. And I it just doesn't, it's perfect for what I need my sound to be.
It's funny whenever I talk to people from like heavier music scene, rock, metal, and I ask about the rigs, right? I have yet to have, that I can remember, one person from any heavier band that starts with their guitars. They always talk about the amps first, which is kind of funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it makes sense though. Like I get, because there's so much of the sound of that genre of music is generated from the amplifier itself. But
Yeah, and
it's
then
an interesting trend.
the next thing would be the pickups,
Mm-hmm.
for me. Because the guitar, I hate to say it, I'm not saying that I'm, you know, any different. I mean, in the sense of like any other player in that sense, but I think a lot of the tone with guitars comes from your fingers and from your soul, dude. So if you have a guitar, yeah, that obviously is a knockoff and it doesn't sound that good, you know what I mean? Like a player that comes in and knows how to tweak it the best that they can, it's going to sound different than some other person that does. You know what I mean? Like a guitar, you can kind of make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard to explain because I can rock a knockoff like Gretsch or a knockoff Fender, and people are like, "Damn, what is that?" And I'm like, "Dude,
Right.
it's a knockoff, but I put these pickups on here, and I did the action like this. I'm rocking these kind of string. You know what I mean?" And also, that's the way I play. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's the thing is, and I've always been of the mindset that it all kind of matters, and I feel like I'm getting a little better at communicating that. Whereas, some people say it's this thing or that thing's the most important. I mean, the player's the most important. That goes without saying.
mhm.
It should go without saying. Sometimes it doesn't. But I've also maintained for a long time, I'm like, hey, there's a reason that Cannibal Corpse doesn't play ukuleles. Like
No,
the
of
gear does.
course.
Yeah, the gear does matter, because some people say it does not matter. I'm like, it does matter. But you're always going to sound like you no matter what at the same time. So I'm
Well,
with you
yeah,
on that
dude.
for
I mean,
sure.
seriously, like as far as like, style and artistry as a musician, like you can't duplicate that. Certain people are certain people are we're all different. So like for instance, you know, if somebody like no one's gonna make the guitar sound. They can try to duplicate what, especially when it comes to writing, what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
having this discussion with my mates who, when I wasn't in the band for 2 albums, they brought a really great guitar player in, Jason Truby of a band called Living Sacrifice. They brought him in to do 2 records, but they were saying that it was hard for him to understand because he came from this metal style band, that it was hard for him to understand, like, okay, they were like, well, what would Marcos do?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And that's a really tough place to be. Like, he just needed to be himself. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, it's like when Dave Navarro came in, he had to be Dave in the Chili Peppers. He had to be Dave Navarro, but he wasn't John Frusciante.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is every player is organic and special in their own right. when it comes to their playing style. And I've been blessed, thank God, to have my own sound, to have my own vibe, because it's my playing when you hear it, for the most part, from what I gather from different listeners. I don't sound like I play in Corn. I don't sound
Right.
like I play in Limp Bizkit. Like, I have my own sound. And that's something that a lot of players, it's like when people go searching for love, they go searching for their sound for their whole
Mm-hmm.
careers. And that's something, it could be a blessing and a curse, because then you do another project and people are like, well, dude, that sounds like you. It sounds like P.O.D. or whatever. And you're like, it sounds like me. I get it. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
you can't do nothing about it. That's my style. I'm a self-taught guitar player. I'm not this virtuoso. I went into that stuff early on and realized that's not what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, I wanna play with style, but with heart, and come from an emotional place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
It.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Merits Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations in 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services, and it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff. It's one of those things too where, having your own thumbprint that is recognizable it's such a cool thing. I see what you mean, where it can be like a little bit of a curse when you try to do other things, but the fact that you can hear a riff and be like, yep, there it is. That's a P.O.D. riff.
yeah,
And that's one thing I wanted to bring up too, because the new record, I got a chance to check it out, and the riffs are so strong. I mean, they always have been, but man, that opening track, I was like, I've never heard this before, but I had the stank face, and I was like, the riffs are so strong with you. When did you develop that did it come through writing? Did it come through just like some band influences? Like your riffs have always been so good and so catchy and memorable.
Oh, well, I mean, I grew up listening to bands that were riff orientated. Like, you got to start with the Kings, man, Black Sabbath.
Oh yeah.
Then you go from there, you get up into Metallica, you get up into like Motorhead, and like, just get up into like these Iron Maidens, these bands that I grew up on, and you start to like, as a player, what is it that I love about this song? Oh, dude, the riff in itself has to be a hook. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people get caught up on a riff being technical or it's too simple or it's too complicated. No, dude, just like any type of music, whether it's soul, metal, whatever, it has to have heart and soul. And what I mean by that, it's got to have a vibe. If music doesn't have a vibe, then it's, to me, I hate to say it, it's not very good. It just doesn't have a vibe. I don't care if the vibe, that's why music is subjective. It's like, hey man, I love that stuff, or I don't really care for that vibe, but it is a vibe. You either love it or hate it, or you're just not your thing. Like Taylor Swift is creating a vibe, whether you like to admit that. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that you like it, or some of you might love it, but right now there's more people that seem to love it than not, and that's because she's created her own energy and her own vibe as an artist. You know what I mean? And of
Right.
course there's marketing involved, but that girl's a genius of a songwriter. When you listen to her story, a lot of people passed on her when she was trying to get signed. And look at how great she is. Linkin Park got passed on 27 times before they got signed. Look at
That's
how
so
huge
insane.
so when you think about things like that, it's like they're creating their own brand and their own sound and their own vibe. P.O.D is its own vibe. And, yeah, dude. My buddy was like, dude, the thing about this is his interpretation of my riffs. He's like, they're so simple, but they're hard because it's so simplistic, but it's also a certain vibe. And if you can't capture that energy of that vibe, then you're playing it wrong. And I said,
Yeah.
yeah, the notes. But see, that goes back to B.B. King. You could play one note. That note's got so much freaking feel. This guy could be playing a gazillion notes. You're going to remember that one note over the million notes that this other guy just played. What I'm getting at, it's about an energy and a vibe. And that's what I try to do as a guitar player and always have been. But it also comes from a place of, like I said, like I made a decision because early on I was like, oh, I could start shredding and get the Eddie Van Halen's because I was into Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van, and I thought that stuff was cool. And I still think it's cool. It just, I went for more of a Carlos Santana, The Edge, Martin Gore with riffs, approach, and feel as a player as opposed to that.
Right.
And that was my conscious decision. It had nothing other than, and I'm self-taught, so I kind of had to just kind of feel it. Nobody was like, it could have been wrong. And like James Brown said, hey, if it sounds good and it feels good, then it's probably good. Right. So it's the same kind of energy for me as a player. And, it's funny because I get people asking me all the time, hey, can I get lessons from you? And all this. I said, well, I can get you to a certain point. And I studied music. I'm first chair low brass. But that stuff didn't move me. It was too black and white paper. And I was like, that's cool. I get the language, but didn't have enough. It didn't intrigue me or catch my soul. And for me, music's got to do that. Guitar playing's got to do that, and, even if it's not heavy music, it's got to feel a certain way. And that's why it's going to trip because we're going to go from something that's not guitars because I DJ and that is taboo to a lot of people that are guitar players. And I
Yep.
understand why, but they don't seem to see that as an instrument or as an outlet to be creative, where I beg to differ. The controller that you're using is kind of like a pedal board. You have effects, you have loops, you have things that you can do to manipulate sounds and actually mix song ideas together. If you people think you're just hitting one button, that could very well be the case for someone who pre-recorded their stuff, but that's the case in rock and roll now anyways. There's guys
Mm-hmm.
running a gazillion tracks. I'm like, so it's not even about that. You're trying to create a vibe and be creative. So like I could put the bass line from uh, Fascination Street on The Cure, loop that, and then add another drum loop beat in there, and then actually bring in the vocal of some random song and have it go over that. You're mashing up, and now who made that mashup? I did. You see what I'm saying? Because in my head I heard it, and it's the same thing with guitar playing, dude. It's like if I use this effect, maybe I can run it through this amp and run it through this. You know what I'm saying? It's just all about being creative. And I think I would encourage guitar players and musicians to stop being so narrow minded and tunnel vision and kind of open up and try things, because you never get a mistake could become reward. You know,
Mm-hmm.
something that you think, oh, dude, this augmented seventh shouldn't work with this other thing. And it's like, well, dude, it shouldn't, but it sounds killer. And I think it does work. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So
100%.
that's my approach. And for me, it's always like, dude, let's jam it. Let's vibe it out. Let's vibe a riff out. Because it may not, in theory, in my head, I wrote it like this, but once I start hearing the actual beat or a vibe to it, I'm like, I can actually change it a little bit because it feels better this way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So getting to that song drop, I added a vibrato bend in it.
Yep.
And at the time, the producers were like, what the hell are you doing? And I go, trust me, dude, that's what it's supposed to sound like. But it was unorthodox to them, and they were like not understanding it. And there was a lot of moments on this record that they didn't quite understand.
Mm-hmm.
And even on Bow Down, I add a little chug. It's pretty simple, but the gallop, like old school. And they're like, dude, keep it in this decade, bro. And I was like, oh, you're going to talk, excuse my French, but I was like, I go, trust me on this one. That's a hook, whether you like to see it like one or not, it is. And dude, at the very end, we got nothing but respect for each other, because it's a team of, they're called the Heavy, they're a team, a producer team. And they're like, dude, thanks for sticking to your guns, because I think we created something pretty awesome. And I'm like, yes, we did. Yes, we
Mm-hmm.
did, man. So, it's all about getting to the destination. Sometimes the journey can be a little perplexing and overwhelming, and you're like, oh, man. But once you get to the destination, it's so rewarding, dude.
Dude, 100%. And you never know what's gonna fit. I've told stories a bunch of times on this show about a guitar track that just kind of sounded lifeless and was just like, it's a good solid riff, it's a good solid song, but it's not doing anything. And I just would inject like the grossest, like on its own, if you listen to isolated tracks, like
Mm-hmm.
ice picky, Telecaster bridge pickup, like it doesn't sound very good on its own. But I was hearing that the song was missing certain frequencies, and
Mm-hmm.
we just mixed it in, blended it in, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden it was like, wow, this isn't boring anymore. It was
Well,
kind of boring before.
you ought to know better playing a telly, which if you listen to, we want to dissect a song per se, is Boom. That was played
Mm-hmm.
on a Telecaster more than anything. And a lot of people are like, okay, when you hear the riff on Boom, which is a pretty big P.O.D. song, and the opening riff, and when you sit there and listen, you're like, I would have never thought that was a telly.
Right.
And dude, it is, but tellies have this bite, and unless you can kind of, especially for heavy music, find a way to give it some warmth and all of that, it's gonna be ear piercing. It's not right. But sometimes you want that. Oh, this part has to have a nasty bite, and I want it to sound like crappy, bitey, annoying. But
Mm-hmm.
we went there, and then we kind of were like, okay, well, let's tweak it to give it a little bit more. And then that comes with the pedal that you're using. That comes with the distortion, everything, dude. So
Yep.
I completely understand what you're saying there, man. Because a lot of it, dude, is up here. It's in the brain, man. How do we get what we're hearing here to come out of our fingers, out of our amps, or out of our, our DAWs while we're
Mm-hmm.
writing,
Totally.
and that's in any style of music. But that's what the challenge is on what makes your piece of art so special, creative wise, because it's coming from your brain, no one else's, and that's why it sounds the way it does. The problem nowadays is everyone's kind of replicating everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and I like when I grew up in an era when bands. I mean, I still listen to a lot of music, but when bands have personality, and what I mean by that is their sound, their songs, they don't sound like the other band that's playing. Like you could be at a show together and you can actually do, you know, gigs and stuff, but let's go back to the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
You got Soundgarden, Nirvana. Let's just go to your let's talk about your part of the your zone.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oregon, you got Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains. Those three bands and Pearl Jam, those four
Mm-hmm.
bands all sound different from each other.
100%. It's always
And
been
and,
funny
and,
to me when they're
and
lumped together, right?
but they're lumped together in a scene. But I'm thinking to
Yes. Oh,
myself
right.
going, they all had their own personality, they all had their own voice, they all had their own sound. So for me, music is special like that. Rage doesn't sound like Red Hot Chili Peppers. The cool thing is when you hear P.O.D., whether you love my band or dislike my band, you know it's P.O.D. when you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's Sonny's voice. You know, oh yeah, that's that riff. That's P.O.D., dude. That's what I think is
100%.
lacking right now in music. Everybody sounds like all the other bands. Like all the bands are running the profilers. Everyone's effects and production is all the same, and it's just like you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when hair metal was out in the 80s and all the bands were coming out and they all looked the same and sounded the same. And I was like, damn. But it wasn't until bands started doing their own stuff, those were the ones that would have actually take a risk and come out and like, dude, that band is awesome. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I'm on a little bit of a rant and I got a Topo Chico here. So forgive me if you see me
Nice.
sipping on that, but hey, it doesn't have alcohol in it. It's just a tangerine ginger extract. I mean,
Nice.
I mean,
I bet,
if it did have a
you
little
know,
alcohol, I wouldn't mind either. But it's
that'd
a
be all
little,
right.
it's a little early.
Cheers.
Salud.
Yeah. So, you bring up an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about that, but I've been feeling similarly. I mean, I love lots of different genres, and I kind of get the spice variety, the spice of life
Mm-hmm.
from listening to a lot of different styles of music, from hip hop to country to metal, like punk, whatever. It's all in there. Taylor Swift sometimes. Yeah, I just said it
Yeah.
out loud. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed. Uh, it's interesting though, but specifically, I feel like in heavy music, for lack of a better term, the cookie cutter has come out yet again, just in a different form, but very similar to the hair metal days, which made it feel kind of stale and
Mm-hmm.
stagnant. And then you
Mm-hmm.
got Nirvana, that was like, now we're not doing this anymore. You
Yes.
know, it makes me
And
wonder if
I
we're
mean,
poised for that again with somebody else.
I hope so. I hope so, man. I got some hope with literally. I mean, for me, these younger bands that have come out, like the Dance Gavin Dances. Like when they
Mm-hmm.
came out, I was really like, okay, they're doing progressive. They're messing with odd time signatures. They're messing with jazz. They're doing like, metal, hardcore, but they're playing melodic stuff. It was all over the place. A little
Yeah.
schizophrenic, but it's okay. I really enjoyed it because this gives me a little bit of hope because I do lean a little more towards the progressive side of things when it comes to music. And what I mean by that is like Radiohead, Porcupine Tree, freaking, even on the metal side, Dream Theater, Tool, and stuff like that, dude. Like I love progressive, even the old stuff. Yes, Foreigner, like that progressive stuff back then in the 70s, Genesis, like people know their pop stuff. But I'm like, dude, if you do your research and go back, they're all over the place. And it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
awesome. You can learn a lot, you know what I mean? So I I'm always looking for bands that I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool, man. Like, uh, uh, what are they called? There's a band that's out. They're kind of like soul. They're from Texas. They got the weirdest name. Kurang Bing.
Krang, I can never
Yeah,
pronounce it. I know
I mean
exactly
either.
who.
Uh,
Krangbin,
yes,
something like that. Yes,
they're sick, dude.
they are
One of
really
my
awesome.
favorite songs by them is called Sheeta. They're a three-piece, drummer, guitar, and bass. The girl plays bass. The guitar player is a shredder in his own mind, in his own outright mind. Like for me, like he's a dope player. Is he doing what everyone else? No, he's playing soulful reverbs. It's so dope, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a different style. And I went to go check their Spotify listeners. They're not on the radio. They're not doing, big, like, they're doing huge shows, but dude, they have 8 million monthly listeners on Spotify alone.
That's incredible.
And when you think about that, you're like, that's so awesome because, dude, they're a musician driven little trio.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had guest appearing vocals, Leon Bridges and stuff like that. But, dude, I, I can appreciate that. They're doing their own thing. And that is what I feel, even though we get categorized in so many different ways, if you really do your research with my band, other than the songs that you hear on the radio, and you study what we do, we flirt with reggae, we flirt with punk, we flirt with funk, we flirt with rap, we flirt with a lot of genres. And when you do that, it makes it hard for a business to try to categorize you. So then
Mm-hmm.
you add a little spiritual element. Oh, now you're this type of band, or you're a Christian band, or no, now you're a new metal band. And it's like, hey man, we're just a band that started in the garage, the old American dream. And when you look at it, Apple, uh, IBM, all these corporations started in the garage. I lump us in that. I said P.O.D. started in a garage. Four dudes with a
Mm-hmm.
dream, and we got in a van just like everybody. No one handed us anything, and we just kind of went out and made a name for ourselves. And we did our version of it, dude. We love hardcore, we love rap, we love punk, and we just did our own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Beastie Boys are very in that realm too, man. So that's just as a player, I gravitate to that sort of thing, and I'm gonna continue to preach originality in the sense of personality as a player and as a songwriter, because what's happening is everyone's just, oh, he's doing it, I'm going to do it. That's cool. See, for me, we're in an industry that tells you what's cool, and that's where it's wrong.
Right.
Everybody's doing this, you need to do that. It's like you're already losing. You're behind the curve now. If you're following what's happening now, you got to be a leader in the sense of like, I'm going to do what I want to do. Now, there's a risk there. People may not understand it. Look
Mm-hmm.
at, it's funny, man. A lot of the epic guitar players. Let's go with another Seattle northwestern bass player, Hendrix. America didn't get him until he went to England, and the Who vouched for him, and a bunch of different other musicians, and said this guy is awesome. It wasn't until that happened, then everybody over here was like, oh man. And he was given a chance to go out on tour and open up for these bigger acts. But it's crazy to me, dude. It's like he took a risk and he did his version of the blues and rock. And people didn't quite understand it at first. And I feel as a player, I've been misunderstood. And I get lumped in with a bunch of other sounds and bands that I'm like, dude, that's not even where I'm grabbing from. The coolest compliment is being on Ozfest and having other metal guitar players going, dude, where, in particular with, at the time, Youth of the Nation,
Mm-hmm.
where, where are you coming from? Where are you grabbing? Like, what's making you think? And I'm like, well, dude, first and foremost, I listen to alternative most of the time and jazz, and then I listen to hip hop, but I also listen to like electronic music. Electronic music has a lot of like ambiance, and that's the true, like, it's an electronic version of a journey of progressive music. It's just created digitally. and it just takes you in different places. That's all that is. Some people just hate on it. Well, yeah, it's not a real band, and all. I go, yeah, but you're still creating a landscape. And when I would listen to it, that's why P.O.D. had some remixes by The Crystal Method throughout the years, Paul Oakenfold. And during the pandemic, I was like, screw it, man. I've always loved this. Why don't, I'm on lockdown. I might as well just start DJing and teach
Mm-hmm.
myself how to do that stuff. So I started going online, and people started tuning in. And the next thing you know, hey, when are you going to play live? And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's just fun, man. So it's just about being creative. That's all I'm going to say. Whether you're doing it on any instrument, uh, or if you're painting or doing any other art form, you want to tap in. I always point up and say, tap into that ET style as an artist,
Yeah.
and just to get there, man. And you're taking a risk if you're always taking a chance as an artist, but you're doing it to gratify yourself first as a player
Mm-hmm.
and as an artist. If people like it, cool. If they don't, then hey, you did what you loved.
So spinning off of that a little bit, you guys were, at least from the first time I ever heard you, and probably the first time a lot of people started paying attention, were always very different,
Hmm.
and you always had your own sonic fingerprint. And I'm imagining some people didn't get it at the time, but
And they
at
still
what
don't.
point? Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Maybe that's the answer. But I was gonna say, at what point did you go, people are starting to understand this? Like, or enough people are getting it. They're understanding what we're putting out there, and they're liking it. That, like, this is going to be a real thing that I can live off of.
I think it was us more understanding the system and having the actual knowledge and learning from respected producers like the Rick Rubins, the Howard Bensons, the Glenn Ballards, and all the different producers that we work the heavy, because they're
Mm-hmm.
musicians too. You're just adding another force to your little clique there, and we're just brainstorming. The best have done it. The U2s, the Radiohead, they all have like these producers that like Brian Eno or whatever. They get in there
Mm-hmm.
and they work on these albums as a band. Being open to that, not necessarily giving your all to that and submitting, being submissive, but being able to understand when to take bits and pieces as an artist to help you grow. And for us,
Okay.
knowing that, okay, we got our foot in the major leagues, we got signed by a major. Now, how do we capitalize this, get up to the plate as a baseball player and swing for the fences, but also continue to have the integrity and the sound that we do, but also doing it in a way that the mass public can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have four members that understand that, not fighting it and saying, "Hey, dude, let's do something cool that we still think we like this. We still think it's cool, but let's make something that we're proud of, but that we think other people are gonna like also." So in a weird sense, what I mean by that is like we don't write for anybody else, but knowing that you're in the game and you understand songwriting, you go back to the Beatles, you have to understand that there's a recipe. I don't care if it's metal, hip hop, there's a recipe when it comes to structure in a song, and there's a chorus, there's a verse, there's a bridge, they call it the middle eight. Once you understand that, I don't care how you do it. A perfect example of unorthodox way of doing that is System of a Down.
Oh yeah.
And people, you like listen and you go, oh, the structure is pretty basic, like it's the same. They're doing the chorus, they're going back in, they did a break into this or whatever, but they're doing it within the rules, but it's still different. Get it? So I have to tell bands, like when I produce something, like you want to have something that you're proud of, but you gotta kind of remember the fundamentals of songwriting and structure within your sound, but bringing
Mm-hmm.
your sound into that. And once you learn that, then you're in the game. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's my
Mm-hmm.
personal, and we as a band understood that. And one of the main producers that actually got us to understand that was Howard Benson,
Mm-hmm.
because we used to write like Iron Maiden songs, 10-minute songs. And he was like, dude, you got like 5 riffs in here that are so good that why are you only playing it once? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, if it's a good part, that people want to hear it again. And I'm like, no, you're right. That's true. Anything that has a vibe, you're like, dude, when a band plays a part and then they only go there for a few rounds, and you're like, dude, I wish they would have went back to that. You know what I'm saying? Learning those types of things as a writer and as a player, then you can dominate. And then you just got to understand what a hook is. A hook can be anything on drums, on bass, guitar, or vocals. And if you can understand how to tastefully put that, which is a lot harder said than done from what I can understand, we've just been blessed as a band to understand it, and we get it because I think a lot of it has to do with our taste in music. Understanding what a hook is when it comes to hip hop, when it comes to anything, like you can hear it. Oh, dude, that's a single right there. That song's got a bang. That's a banger. That's how you got it. That's a banger, dude. That song hits hard. Even if you don't even like it, like let's say we go pop, I'm like, I don't really, like if you go to Justin Bieber and it's like, oh, that's of course I get it. I get my down in Georgia. You're like, oh, when you hear it, you're like, that's catchy, dude. Like, how you gonna hate on that? You don't like Sweet. Some people think it's too sweet, and we joke around because I have my punk rock friends like, yeah, dude, it's a little too sweet. And I said, well, some people like sweet chocolate, dude, really sweet, juicy chocolate. And some people are like, that's too sweet for me. I understand, you know what I'm saying? And it's just getting that mentality and growing to a place where you're not segregating music and having a tunnel vision. I think that's part of the growth, and I think that's what helped us a lot as a band, and it continues to help us. One of the biggest compliments, I got a phone call from the producer that actually did the fundamental elements of Southtown and Satellite, and he did the Payable on Death record and The Awakening and Murder Love. Howard Benson called me a couple of days ago, and he was just raving about, he didn't produce this new record. He thought, dude, I just think you guys are hitting on all cylinders. This new record is on fire, bro. I'm proud of you guys. This, no ego, no nothing. This guy has sold hundreds of millions of records, dude, with different bands. And to hear that from a guy who could have ego and be like, oh, dude, I didn't do that record. It sucks. You know what I mean? Like, he's actually praising it, going, hey, man, I'm really proud of you guys. And I go, well, dude, we learn from the best. And he's like, you guys got it, man. He's all, and you know what? That's like in any trade. I don't care if you're a plumber, a carpenter, you're going to pick up tricks along the way, and you're going to get better and better as you get older in your trade. And I think a lot of people that understand it, because there's people that get older and they don't grow, and you're like, well, what happened to that guy? He didn't grow. For our band, we've been blessed enough to be like, dude, let's try it, and then we'll decide that we don't like it, then we're not going to do it. We used to be like, nah, we're not doing that. Where that's a very young mentality. That's a very, I'm 15, 16, my 20s. This is what I am, man. I'm hardcore. I don't do that. Or I'm punk rock. I don't do that. Or I'm hip hop. The segregation of music is kind of something that we've never been, like, we've always been against it. We've always been open to, like, dude, let's try it and try ideas and exhaust it and then come to a conclusion. If we like it, cool. If we don't, then don't.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Good Hertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. and some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblintsaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
Hey, this is Aaron from No Simple Road. I'm inviting you to come hang out with Apple, Mel, and I as we talk with the musicians, artists, chefs, authors, and beyond from the world that turns us on. We're reaching into the improvisational music scene, the psychedelic culture, the festival world, and getting to know what makes the people tick that create those scenes. Come join us on the long, strange trip over at No Simple Road.
I think the listeners now, especially with how streaming is, where you can hop from, P.O.D. to the Beatles to Lil Wayne to whatever, as at your leisure. I think that it's back in the day. I know at least when I was a kid, it was kind of cool to be the one thing. Like, I'm punk rock. That was me. I'm into punk and I'm into metal. I'm into heavy stuff. I don't listen to that. That's for sissies. I'm not listening to that. And it's so dumb. Like, because in reality, you'd hear some, NSYNC bop or something like, oh, this song's pretty good. Like, everybody'd hear it. Everybody has always kind of listened to everything. And now it seems, especially with younger people, that it's actually not cool to be the person that's like, I only listen to punk. I won't listen to anything else. It's not even desirable now to be that way. And so that's one of the benefits of the internet. It's got some problems, obviously, but that's one of the good things.
It does, man. It does have its problems for sure. No, I totally I agree with you 100%, dude. So.
Yeah. Well, we are knocking on the door of the end of the episode here. I do have some. I told the Tone Mob Facebook group you were coming on, and there was a smattering of people who wanted to. Marcus Strankowski. Let's see what he's got to say. Oh, you know what? We really addressed this. He was like, ask him about the early band shows in the area, and like, was he actually into hardcore? I've seen him wearing like a Zao jersey and some other stuff, and I'm like, well, we kind of touched on that one already. Like, the answer is yes.
Well, I will say this, man. Yes, even now, man, just to see it come back around, and it's funny to see kids think like it's this new thing. Like, for instance, with like the Turnstiles or these certain bands, and I'm like, dude, that just reminds me of what I grew up on, dude. Like, they're just taking what I hear it all. It's amazing, and I love that they're doing that. That's awesome. I still love that. So to hear these newer bands like the Capras, I'm not sure if you heard of a band from Louisiana named Capra, or
I haven't.
A band called Throne from Sweden. Like, you hear this stuff and you're like, damn, dude, it's so cool. There's this underlining like hardcore thing that's on the verge of going mainstream, and it's pretty trippy, because I'm like, that's cool though, but the kids think it's like this new slice of bread or something. I'm like, nah, you want to check this band out, then you show them and they're like, wow. I had no idea, but dude, that's just because they're young. They don't know, like, but that's fine. I love music, and to me, I'm not a pretentious a-hole when it comes to that, dude. It's like, hey, dude, some people, I grew up around people like, oh, you don't know who that is, blah, blah. It's like, dude, I don't care. I like it. Like, I want to know who it is. Like, you know what I mean? That's the thing. There's too much TC in music, and it really annoys the crap out of me, which is, I'm too cool for school and I'm better than you. And I see that a lot. It's a little pretentious, but I appreciate what's going on with that hardcore sound coming out now. So I love old school hardcore. I love new school hardcore. That's cool. So
yeah, that's great. The other main one, there's a lot of like, hey, sweet, can't wait for this episode, legend, all that stuff, which is great. But I think this is going to be a tough question. But I think it's, and I'm sure it will change as the day goes on. But Noah Barnett, he wants to know, I need to know which riff he's most proud of. That's going to be tough, though.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. It's because of the way that it was given birth. What I mean by that is it's an intimate song, and it's probably our biggest song. And no matter where we play it, big, small, Asia, you name it, dude, Africa, wherever we play, this song resonates. And this guitar part, no matter where I hit it, it just connects instantly. And there is something special in that when I hit that note. And it's so simple, but that first note, Youth of the Nation, when I hit that, dude, it is like a religious experience for the listener. Like we would be in Japan, they don't speak a little lick of English, and they're singing "We ha, the youth of the
Right?
nation," and you're like sitting there going, "What the heck?" But as soon as the lights go and you hit that one note, ding, 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 and then it just hits everybody in the soul, dude. And that came, the way it was given birth was because of a school shooting in San Diego while we were writing the Satellite album. So we were down in our
Wow.
luck, and we were a few blocks away from where that happened at Santana High in San Diego. And I just started playing this delayed out thing and just bummed because I was like, dude, that's somebody's kid, somebody's brother, sister. You know, that's so sad. And then Wolf put that iconic little drum beat behind that part, and it just was giving birth, dude. So to me, I love all my babies. I love all my riffs. But that one has a really special place in my heart, and it's my favorite because of that.
I remember where I was and like where I was turning in my vehicle the first time I heard that song. I could walk over there right now. It's still in my town I'm in. And I remember when that came on the radio, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And it got it going. I was like, "This is P.O.D. I'd never heard him do anything like this. This is like, while I could tell it was you guys immediately, I remember being like, this is something. This is something
You're
else."
like,
So I can
Pepsi
understand.
had it right, man.
Yeah, Pepsi was right. Thanks,
funny.
PepsiCo.
Yeah,
Hey,
dude.
Pepsi, sponsor this podcast. Come on,
Exactly.
Pepsi.
Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
No, let's get Fanta, man. Fanta.
All right. Yeah. Don't you want a Fanta? Yep.
Yeah, but that dude, that song, like I said, is just it's so personal, but it's more relevant today than it was back then, with all the violence that goes on that's still happening in the world with regards to that stuff. And it's just sad, man, because those three songs in particular, man, they just don't. They have a life of their own. Youth of the Nation, Boom, and Alive. They were from our biggest album ever, and those songs are just timeless. And they're classic. You know, they'll be even more classic as time goes on. They're just classic rock. Like people are like, oh yeah, dude. So for us, man, it's definitely cool to hear the connection, especially as you see us get older. You see people that grew up on us bringing their kids to the show, and then they're like, yeah, my dad brought me up on you guys. And it's like, it still continues to happen. We have a song on our new record called Afraid to Die that kind of has that anthemic-y chorus vibe going on. And it has Tatiana from Ginger featuring on it. And
Oh, that's who that was. Okay.
yeah,
That's a great track.
and thank you, man. And basically, she's featuring on it. We wrote it, and we asked her if she wanted to sing this part, and she said yes. And by the way, Alex, her husband, original drummer from Suicide Silence, has actually been playing drums with us for about 2 years now, live. And
Nice.
Suicide Silence, well, I think they're metalcore. I don't know. I've been corrected. Deathcore, metalcore, whatever. But
Yeah.
that's where he comes from LA, and he's married to her. It just so organically happened. And when we met, and he was like, dude, if you ever need drums, my wife's a huge fan from the UK, from the Ukraine. She's a huge fan of your band. So it wasn't like he got in the band and then we asked her to be like, it just was organic. Like, dude, she's been a huge fan of your band. If you ever need any drumming or anything, I'm available and I'm on tune. And it all worked out, just organic. So that song right there, dude, we've been getting videos thrown at us periodically from different people around the globe, Canada, from everywhere. And it's younger kids because their parents are playing the music. Dad, you got me hooked on this song. I can't stop listening to it. Thanks, Pops. I'm pissed off or whatever. And it's so funny, dude, because it's like, that's how music works, you know? And we're playing this song that half of these kids weren't even alive when we wrote it. And they're singing it,
Yeah.
dude. And they're like, dang, this is crazy.
That's the power of it, man. That's how you know you're doing a good job too. So keep at it. You know,
Thanks, man.
Good job. Yeah.
And on the
Well,
Topo Chico, you want to endorse this podcast? So there you go.
Yes, please, Topo Chico. I'm here for you. All right, we got a couple classic questions to wrap this up on. Before I do that, I usually like to give the guests a chance to, say whatever you want to say, shout out whoever you want to shout out, plug anything you want to plug. The floor is yours. You're talking to a few thousand people right now, and you can tell them whatever you want.
Well, I just want to say one of the biggest lessons I've learned in this life is to grow, and don't put a clamp on it. Be open, especially, on a lot of forms, spiritually, emotionally, but mainly I'm talking artistically. Grow, because what happens is when you grow, you create something that's extremely unique as a guitar player, as a musician. And I want to encourage all you guys, if that's the kind of person, musician, artist you want to be, to grow, keep an open mind when it comes to art and when it comes to expression and when it comes to being a guitar player. So I'll say that. And if you get a chance, my DJ name, Marcos, is my real name, but my DJ name is Marquitos. So if you can remember that, I've been spinning a lot in Southern California, and I'm writing a lot of electronic music. If that's your thing, at some point I'm going to be starting my SoundCloud and putting some mixes up, and we'll see how that goes. But it's something that I enjoy doing and I love doing, and it's all about being free and dancing and getting into the vibe and the energy, dude. So Drop was actually created with that in mind. The drop of music that comes down. Obviously it's not that type of song, but the drop in electronic music or the drop in hip hop or metal, when that drop hits, it's in your face, man. You can't deny it. So we wrote a song about it. And it's actually a song that I wanted to be on the last record. We just never got to it. So it was the first idea on this record. I was like, one of the first major ideas. I was like, remember, I've been wanting to write a song that's based on this. And that comes from my influence on the electronic stuff. So if you get a chance, Marquitos, I do have an Instagram. It's up in my little comment area, whatever you call that, caption area of my profile. Go ahead and give it a like, and you can stay up to date with that stuff. So cool.
And for all those listening, to make that easier on you, I'll put that in the description of the podcast, so you can find it real easy. Yeah, along with all the other stuff. So
yeah,
there'll be a bunch of links there for you to check out.
The new record drops May 3rd. We're gonna put another song, another DSP song, which is for the internet only. It's called "I Got That." That'll be coming out the day of the record release. We shot another little content video for that, and then we're on our way to touring on a new record. So May 3rd, Veritas, which means truth in Latin dialect. So it was a way of being creative and not saying this album's called Truth.
Right.
Yeah, it's called Veritas. So we're really excited. We got the feature from Randy Blythe, Lamb of God, the feature from Tatiana from Ginger, and we got a feature from Cove Reaver of Seosin, which I can't wait for everybody to hear. It's one of our favorite songs as a band. And that song is called "This Is My Life."
Very cool. Well, looking forward to checking out all of that stuff. And like I said, folks, the links to all that will be in the show notes in the description. So
awesome, man.
All right. Final questions. Here we go. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
The DM2.
Ooh, DM2. You like the original or the Wazacraft better?
I have them both. And
You're good with either way?
yeah, I was collecting the older ones, but they would go down, and so you got little parts from different ones, and just messing with them. And I have like 5 old DM2s, and I know they're worth something, but they're so run down that I just started getting the new one, and
The new one's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
I'm
probably
glad
one of my favorites.
I'm glad they finally came out with a new one. People were begging for that for years before it came out.
I know, dude.
Boss is awesome. And yeah, DM2, good pull. Final question. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
Pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the mood. I'm well traveled, man. I've had pizza in Italy, which was, I'm not gonna lie. The original was not what I expected it to be. And I
Okay.
tried various pizzas around Italy, and I was like, New York is high up there. It's a tie between New York because it's the thin pizza,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's also Chicago style, the deep dish, where when I tap into my inner fat boy, which I used to be really big, and I would have probably chosen back then my deep dish because I want more dough. I was just a dough boy. But I
Mm-hmm.
think nowadays I go for that thin crust New York style pizza with ricotta on it.
Ooh, yeah, I do like the ricotta once in a while.
Heck yeah,
Do you
dude.
have, do you have a favorite New York pizzeria that needs a plug?
You know what? I can't think of one off the top of my head.
All right.
I don't want to get it wrong either, because then it'd be like,
Yes, you'll
oh,
be in
you messed
trouble.
it up, man. It's
Yeah.
like so.
I feel you. I get it. You don't want to get New Yorkers angry at you. That's a
I
dangerous
will
place
say
to be.
this though, as far as like corporate pizza,
Mm-hmm.
Domino's upped their game.
They did.
They upped
It's
their
true.
game. They listened, and I remember when they did their rebrand. Hey, we have new ownership or whatever they did. They did so many different marketing schemes. Their crust, their sauce. I was like, and you know what? I order if I'm gonna do a quick fast pizza. Let's say I'm watching a sporting event. I want to order some pizzas. It's between. I used to be a Pizza Hut guy. It's between. It's dot number one would be Domino's,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's a tie for number 2 between Little Caesars and freaking Papa John's.
You know, it sounds weird to say. I have still there's not, and it's just because there's not one around me. I've never had Papa John's ever.
No, well,
Yeah.
the backstory with Papa John's is one of the guys that used to work for, I guess, in the corporate of Pizza Hut. He branched off and started his own.
Oh, okay.
So he took
But
that
I'm with you.
model. You know what, dude? I can't deny stuffed crust.
It's a good time. You get it. It's cheese. It's all
Yeah,
in
hey,
there.
and some people like, dude. I go, dude. I have to get the stuffed crust, dude. That, like, most people like. I'll eat down and be like, oh, where's my dog at? He can have my crust. I'll chuck it and my dog will freaking tear up some pizza crust, right? But when I got the cheese in there, I'm eating
Like,
the whole
nope.
pizza, dude. I'm saying the whole
Yep.
slice.
You can't have it. It's got cheese in there. Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging out. If you got a little time, we'll see what kind of shenanigans we can get into on Patreon, if that works for you.
Let's do it.
All right. All right, everybody. For Marcos, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Alrighty, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, you're really, really, really going to like the Patreon, where we talk for about another 40-ish minutes or so, if memory serves. It's a really, really, really fun conversation. We get into supernatural stuff. He tells one of the craziest stories that I have ever heard on this podcast, something that happened to him as a child. I'm still thinking about it. So head over to Patreon if you want to support the show. For $5 a month, you can get access to all those bonus episodes, and it helps out immensely. And don't forget, I know I said it a whole bunch in the beginning, if you'd like to hang out and eat some delicious pie with me in Nashville, Tennessee, I'll be at 2809 Dickerson Pike in Nashville, Tennessee, May 4th, this coming Saturday. If you're listening the week this episode drops, it's this Saturday. I will be there at 6 p.m. with a lot of pie that I won't be able to eat by myself. So please show up and help me get it gone. All right, folks, I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. Another huge shout out to Marcos for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, I'll see you on the internet. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.
The number you have reached is 100.7 WMMS.
It wasn't just a radio station, it was a lifestyle.
Cleveland is a rock and roll city for sure.
Yeah! Down! The Wrath of the Buzzard. WMMS. Cleveland.
The rise and fall of one of the most iconic radio stations in America. Profiles, The Wrath of the Buzzard, PROH Files. Subscribe now wherever you get podcasts.